Welcome to the Doc to Doc podcast. I'm Rob Hoyer, medical oncologist.
And my name is Abbas Shafi, gastroenterologist. This is a podcast about lifestyle medicine, disease prevention, and longevity.
This podcast is provided for informational purposes only. It is not medical advice. Please consult your physician for personalized therapy and advice.
Our goal is to enable individuals to become CEO of their health by managing their diet, exercise, sleep, and stress to preventing common disease.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Doc episode 4. And today we'll be talking about fiber and the importance of fiber in your diet. I'm joined by my good friend and colleague, Dr. Abbas Shafi. And Abbas will start off with a description of fiber and some of the different types of fiber. Abbas?
Thank you, Rob. Today we're going to be talking, as Rob mentioned, about fiber. We're going to have a very general conversation. Then we go to some other individual fiber that hopefully clear some of this issue of the fiber for many people. Dietary fiber is, in a general term, for the parts of the plants and other foods that body cannot digest. Fiber is essential for regulation of the bowel movements, cholesterol, blood glucose management, and healthy gut, as well as preventive chronic disease, as well as other function of the body. I am a gastroenterologist, as Rob mentioned. We see daily patient visit that concern about fiber, how much to take, how to take it, and we'll outline some of the fiber intake, and so hopefully be some clarification on that. In general, there's about 3 types of fiber. One is insoluble fiber, the other one is soluble fiber, and some consider the fermented fiber as well. The soluble fiber is any fiber that dissolves in water, and it's like a gel-like substance in the food, and as it slows down the digestion and help you to feel faster. So it's very good for dieting, which is important for not overeating, as well as decreasing the heart rate. The insoluble fiber is more of a add bulk to your stool and helps pass the more quickly through the stomach and intestine. It also helps balance the pH in your intestine. That may prevent from diseases like diverticulitis or refractory bowel disease. The fermentable fiber can be both from a soluble source and insoluble source. This type of fiber increase the bacterial growth in the colon, and as we discussed on pre and probiotic on the last segment. So these are also very beneficial for our general health, as well as gut health. Some example of soluble fiber is like oat, Brussels sprouts, beans, peas, apple, part of oranges, nuts, and flaxseed seed, as well as the majority of the supplemental fiber are mostly soluble fiber. Some of the insoluble fiber is like wheat brands, vegetable like green beans, dark leafy vegetable, root vegetable like carrots, beets, radishes, fruit skins, intact whole grains. For example, an apple, the skin of an apple is insoluble, but the core of the apple is soluble fiber. So some fruit they have both. Some fermentable fiber is like oat, barley, artichoke, chicory roots, leeks, onion, bananas, as well as other fermentation that we do with the other vegetable as well. Rob, as an oncologist, what do you think the importance of the fiber in an individual to preventive cancer as well as daily lifestyle?
Thanks, Abbas, and thanks for that great description of the different types of fiber. I've always been amazed about the diversity of fiber and how important it is in the diet. It's so much more than what we learned about in medical school about fiber, and there's thousands of different types of fiber and different foods, and the key, of course, is the as we talked about yesterday. We talked about the microbiome and probiotics, and if you haven't listened to that episode, I encourage you to check that one out because it we go through the really the this is the part of our body, the microbiome, that can process fiber. So by definition, humans, we cannot ourselves digest fiber. It's our microbiome that the fiber serves as the food, the prebiotic that these organisms will then process and turn into the short chain fatty acids, as we talked about yesterday. So this is absolutely essential for health to eat fiber, and there's certainly, we'll talk about in a second, the diseases that are associated with inadequate fiber intake. And there also can be, you can also get too much fiber in the diet. If you change your diet too fast, you can have problems. And Abbas will talk about that in a few minutes as well. But this is absolutely essential for health to eat some fiber in the diet. And we'll talk about the amounts that are recommended. And inadequate intake, as we discussed, is associated with several different issues that can happen, both digestive and, interestingly, other diseases that are really not related to the GI tract whatsoever, and cancer as well. The importance of fiber is that fiber can only be obtained from plant-based sources. So you really have to eat plants. You're not going to get fiber from animal-based sources, and yeah, it's certainly something that's crucial for the microbiome to have a diverse array of different types of fiber, to have a diverse array of microorganisms in your intestine to process that fiber. So, yeah, perhaps, Abbas, you can talk a little bit about fiber intake in the USA and worldwide, and some of our issues that we're having in American healthcare because of inadequate fiber.
Absolutely. An average American fiber intake is about 13 um, gram per day, which is very, very low. On average, a woman should, a woman under age 50, and of course, the age is very important to how much fiber you take, and as well as ethnicity, as well as how you cook the fiber. But in general, a female under 50 should take between 21 to 25 gram fiber, I believe, minimum a day. And for male below age 50, should be 30 to 38. For children age 1 to 18, should fiber take between about 14 gram when they're very young, and then based on the sex, it can increase up to 31 gram as they get earlier. So the, an average fiber intake in the United States is very, very low. Um, these are habits that we develop in our early childhood, and we continue through our life. So it's very important that to have a healthy diet. And there's very many beautiful, delicious fiber, as you know, that you can choose, which is can be pleasant for the body. Another very important thing with fiber that we should not forget is when you take fiber, you need to have plenty of water so you do not get any um, complication or side effect of the fiber. If you take large amounts of fiber, particularly how much is too much fiber is when the people that take over 70 gram fiber per day, and mostly is due to lack of hydration with it. I give an analogy to my patient is like you making a dough for making bread for those bakers. They understand that, so you choose your fiber, add your flour and water, and then you look at your end product. If it's too tight, you add more water. If it's loose, you add more flour. It's general analogy, but so they go hand to hand together. The fiber intake. And when people are switching diet from mostly um, sort of animal-based diets to plant-based diet, they should do it at their own pace individually. If you suddenly change from um, sort of meat and potato eater to very high fiber content, you will get gas, bloat, and discomfort. And then also you need to choose your fiber intelligently, as well as um, if the fibers are very tough, know how to cook them to make them more palatable as well as digestible to use. So in general, for a recap that for female, again, about 21 to 25 gram per day, and for male, 30 to 38 grams. And children has to do with their age and as well as they're more sensitive to gas and bloat. So you have to be gradually increased as then they can tolerate it. Rob,
Abbas, is that difference for the males and females? Is that just because of the different caloric requirements for men versus women?
um, I do not believe you know that very well. I think it's based on their body size as well as their if the female they feel the gas and bloat from fiber more sensitivity than male. That's maybe one issues that that the fiber can cause more discomfort on the female, but they can choose um, the fiber more appropriately and to see what's the digestion intolerant. But in general, um, possibly also the male probably digest more protein from animal as well. So in literature, commonly is required that there is a different fiber intake from male to female, and I think it's mostly based on the symptoms as well as size as well as daily caloric intake.
I read a book last year. It was, and we'll put it in the show notes. It's the book's called Fiber Fueled by a GI physician named Will Bolskowitz, and this book talks about fiber in the diet and also about ways in which a person can increase their fiber intake and do so slowly. It talks about different sources of fiber. Different, for example, different breads have vastly different amounts of fiber, and one can use different foods over, say, a period of several weeks or months and slowly increase fiber, fermented foods, to try to reduce some of the symptoms associated with increasing fiber in the diet. And in doing this, and as we switched over to me and my family switched over to a plant-based diet, it was certainly something we had to do slowly. We realized if you do it too fast, it's really uncomfortable and something that you just have to be patient with it. And we do eat some animal products too. We eat some cheese and occasionally and some fish, but predominantly a plant-based diet with which is whole food based, and that's one of the keys is that you really have to be careful with, for example, bread that's labeled as whole wheat really may have very little actual fiber in it. It may have a little bit more than the white bread, but still relatively devoid of fiber. It's highly processed, and so you really want to try to find a bread that has a higher amount of fiber, and you can look at the milligram or the gram amounts of fiber on the package. That's often a good way to look at it. In general, the breads that have several different types of grains are going to have more fiber. And you can look at it too. The rougher texture is generally going to offer a little bit more fiber relative to those breads that are very fine textured breads. It's but certainly it's been a learning curve for me. I never knew fiber was so complicated. I really just took this for granted and thought fiber was metamucil you stir up in a glass and eat, but it's really much more than that. So
Well,
yeah, so
that's mostly a Western point of view of it. If you, as I travel throughout the world, that you see people in Africa or Asia or other countries their main diet is plant based, and of course with the life and experience of a century of living, they have learned how to make non-desirable fiber to make it palatable, make it tasty, and make it tolerable. As this topic it is, I want to go with some of the major things that when people switch and cook diet, so and we see them sometimes they feel like there's something wrong with them. Particularly, we see a lot of freshmen um, students. They come to college and they have a basic diet, and then they get themselves educated and they want to go vegan or plant based, and then consequently have pain. A common complaint that we see is common is bloating, abdominal pain, flatulence, change in bowel habits, and if they do not drink enough water, of course, constipation. The the fiber has like a bell curve effect. So initially will loosen up so as amount of water you do, but if you take copious amount of fiber and without like water, then you can get constipated as well, and it can cause a temporary gain weight because of the plant based. Sometimes it's not um, curb the appetite as animal protein. So sometimes initially the people they will try to overeat. Of course, depend what the fiber they choose is very important. But in the long term, they will lose weight and they have better control of their weight as well. So it's very important that when you're taking fiber, um, just if you're taking plant fiber, you do not need fiber supplement. Majority of people can be adequately take fiber on their diet and then enjoy it as well um, as I mentioned again, drinking water. And if you're taking plenty fiber, do not take fiber supplement. Um, and the fiber intake can be as a very very blend type of fiber and gradually increase it to as body tolerate it, and people will see how their body is concentrated. For example, you look at the Indian cooking or Persian cooking, the vegetable they cook is not only sometimes, of course, fermented and preserved, but also certain vegetable. They cook it very well. They add other spices to it to help it digest through the method of cooking and slow cooking, as well as adding different flavor to it. So it can be well tolerated diet, but it takes experience. You cannot just go, get a bunch of broccolis and fruits or stuff like that and it in one setting. That consequently that will shock the system, and they can have side effects.
yeah, I think that's so important. Is starts low and goes slow. It's an adage we often use in medicine, and can't speak highly enough about the importance of going slow. And really, it can be very uncomfortable to add a lot of fiber into your diet right away. So you have to really go slow. And I thought I just mentioned some of the cancer and some other conditions that are associated with low fiber intake. And a lot of these conditions are unfortunately some of the most common health conditions. We'll start off with the non-cancer ones first. Heart disease and diabetes both have been linked to low fiber intake. So there's for example, with heart disease, fiber and you can actually look at the dosage of fiber in the diet is clearly protective for heart disease. And interestingly, also one of the key elements of preventing heart disease is a low sugar diet. So sugar, we're increasingly learning, is associated with heart disease. And so if you eat, for example, a fruit which has sugar in it, if that if that sugar is in the fiber form, in the fruit form, it actually is absorbed much more slowly into the body. It'll still increase the blood sugar a little bit, but not nearly as much as if you drink that as a juice or as processed sugar. We'll see a big spike in the blood glucose with eating raw sugar, for example, and that those big fluctuations in blood glucose are likely associated with heart disease, and also with insulin resistance, which is the hallmark of type 2 diabetes. And those so fiber is clearly protective for both conditions, both heart disease and diabetes. Moving into the cancer diagnoses, we talked about yesterday or colon cancer and rectal cancer, and those two conditions are very, very linked to low fiber intake. Red meat is also associated with risk of colon and rectal cancer, but specifically fiber, a lack of dietary fiber is really will significantly increase risk of both colon and rectal cancer. Breast cancer is also linked to low fiber intake associated with a higher risk of breast cancer. So higher fiber intake, particularly in the teenage years, is protective against breast cancer. So there's a very, very interesting components here. It's probably the fiber is, I believe, likely helping the diversity of the microbiome, which is working in ways that we don't fully understand to try to protect against these conditions. We're still learning a lot about how fiber is protective. We don't have a clear mechanism of action of how that works, but these observations have held up in numerous studies across several decades. So fiber is definitely important for cancer prevention. And we don't have data on all the cancers, but my strong suspicion is that effect is probably protective against fiber is probably protective against multiple different types of cancers, both gastrointestinal and non-gastrointestinal cancers. So, Abbas, any other comments?
Well, in GI, particularly, we see people with chronic constipation as well as uh, recurrent diverticulitis. The lack of fiber in diet in early age develop a pressure building in the colon and consequently outpouching of the colon wall, and that called diverticulum. And when I do colonoscopy, majority of my patient over age 50, they have diverticulum or diverticulosis. And about this patient, about 5% they can get diverticulitis. Then when they're extremely constipated and lack of water, that the pocket can get inflamed and causes diverticulitis, which can be very painful, can cause abscess formation, and at a time can cause spontaneous perforation of the bowel, which might require surgery. So constipation is one of the first signs of that we see, as well as hemorrhoids, which is they're hand together with constipation and hemorrhoids, diverticulosis. Those are those are the early signs symptoms that we see, and then of course consequently to polyp formation and colon cancer, as you mentioned. So the in beside overall general health on daily basis, constipation as well as diverticulitis or diverticulosis. That is the common thing that we see as a consultation. So again, the the, the plant-based diet, or my personal choice is at least 80% of the diet should be plant-based, and then consequently the person not only um, constipation causes abdominal effects, sometimes affect the mood, as well as low energy and low grade fever at the time. So it's very important to to take the diet seriously, and that prevent from many short um, time disease as well as preventive chronic disease as well.
So, Abbas, if the listeners want to learn more about fiber and how they can increase fiber in their diet, do, can you give us some examples and how to start this process?
Of course, I have a basic diet for average individual with intact gut. I want to emphasize that people they have disease like Crohn's disease or abdominal surgeries on their bowel, they have to modify the diet and follow their physician's recommendation. But in general, if you're have an intact gut and basic healthy individual and want to improve your diet, I recommend it in the morning when when you get up and start with 2 glasses of water. Hydrate your body, hydrate your gut, and then make your diet simple. Don't make it complicated. For breakfast, I highly recommend seasonal fruits a part of the diet, whether blueberries, grapefruits, oranges, or cantaloupe, and of course this has to be seasonal as well. Um, you can add, for example, oatmeal with some almonds or a type of walnuts with blueberries. That's another very good choice. Other type of fiber you can choose for breakfast is, many vegetables you can chop up and make a vegetable omelet or have avocado and eggs. So you have your hydration, you have fiber, as well as you have protein. If you're purely plant based, then of course oatmeal or cream of rice, other type of thing with some berries and nuts is a better choice. The other example you can give is granola. You can make your own homemade granola, which is very easy to do, and you can add nuts and at the end put fruits to it. Uh, very delicious, and then you can add if you like dairy, you can add yogurt to it. So that's a very sort of starting breakfast. At 10 o'clock in the morning, I recommend to have some almonds, some walnuts, or any type of nuts that you wish, or half a banana, um, yogurt, a small portion. Um, Before lunch, 1 2 glass of water, depend your work and daily habits are. Because beside eating, your digestion needs some movement, so to help things move along. So if you're working in the fields is very different than working in an office. For lunch, after hydration, I recommend a salad with some protein, um, whether the protein can be diverse from salmon or chicken or other type of protein that a person desire, or you can put nuts and pine nuts or walnuts and other type of uh, nuts on it. If you like cheese, you can put some good quality cheese, feta cheese or goat cheese on it, or a soup with you can put many vegetable in a soup and slowly cooked a bowl of soup in the cold winter time is always helpful. In the afternoon, another fruit like apple, pear, or whatever seasoning you have, take an apple that fulfill you and prevent you from overeating at dinner time. I think the dinner should be early, 4 hours before going to bed, and that can be again a steamed or a cooked vegetable with broccoli or Brussels sprouts, salad, and um, sweet potatoes, and other type of fiber and a protein of their choice, a small amount. Um, for dessert, mostly I recommend again back to the fruit. Avoid the sugary and high carb dessert. So this is a simple um, dietary thing that can be modified by anybody the way they like it. So that's the diet stuff. Some of the top um, fiber that you can take um, does not have to be on a daily basis. One of the best one is black beans, and I can't go to discuss all the pros and cons of all of these. Lima beans, Brussels sprouts, um, avocado, as I mentioned before, sweet potatoes, and these are all easily can be found in a grocery store in the United States. Kidney beans, figs, um, and etc. So many of these things easily can be incorporated on a daily diet. And
Well, thanks for that summary, Abbas. And uh, I must say, it sounds really good, but a question I often get from patients and other folks who ask me about fiber is, well, what about the gas and bloating? How can someone prevent that or try to reduce it? For example, the black beans you mentioned, yeah, they taste great, but I know a lot of folks have a lot of trouble with eating those kind of foods. So how do we deal with that?
well, it's all have to do with the sensitivity of the gut, and as well as the GI tract is very, very smart and will adjust and adapt to your dietary intake. For example, I'll give you an example. For example, milk. If you have taken antibiotic or you have been sick or have viral gastroenteritis, the name of the amount of the enzyme to break down the lactate decreases, so then consequently you becomes intolerant and can get gas and bloat for a couple of weeks. So in those type of people, I tell them just start slowly with a small amount of yogurt or small amount of cheese, and slowly increase it to the amount of milk that they can tolerate. The same thing with fiber. If you look at it again in ancient cultures, and the way they prepare the fiber is very different that we use in United States. Number one, in majority of the fiber, they cook it very, very slowly. And second, the enzyme, they add other type of uh, uh, spices to break down. For example, um, they add cumin, which is one of the best anti-gas, particularly with legumes, or add oregano or other spices that each culture they have to add to that. And as you adding fiber to diet, the quantities I think is more important than anything else. So start slowly, start experiencing a small amount of the fiber and gradually go up. But however, in general, the tougher the fiber, the most more gas production it is. For example, I give you an example. For example, some patient that cannot tolerate the skin of an apple, but I ask them to peel the apple or pear, the same thing, or cucumbers. Sometimes the cucumbers, if there's big tough cucumber, the skin of that can cause discomfort and pain. The same thing with Brussels sprout and broccoli. So those should be cooked slowly, and add um, other type of cumin, whether oregano, whether other type of spices to make it more palatable. We get some patient that suddenly they switch the diet and they will have severe suffering and pain, um, and which will recommend for them a diet which is mostly you stop all this fermenting type of fiber, and we start from slowly from some soluble fiber and gradually add one to your diet every 3 to 4 days, and you will increase as tolerant. And certain patients, certain type of fiber is more gas bloat than the other ones, so then they have no choice to eliminate those type of fiber. But the fiber like avocado or sweet potatoes, blueberries, berries generally well tolerated. So they can pick and choose through their experience and see which one they enjoy the most and with minimal side effect, and take it from there. The food that we cannot digest, the particular fiber in our gut flora, is digestible to many bacteria, and the production of that is gas. So that's what we feel gas. And in our GI tract, we do not have pain receptor; we have stretch receptors. So when that gas production increases in the colon particularly, and causes the pain, and when the colon stretches to a certain distance, then it goes to spasms. Another thing to kind of help with this, have a customary after 10-15 minutes after each meal, go to the bathroom to get rid of the excess of gas, so it would not be so much build up and doesn't cause this excess of stretching and spasms. um, Peppermint tea or peppermint oil always helps, whether with cooking or peppermint tea afterwards of that can also help with the, is the most one of the natural antispasmodic. Time, other herbal tea, it's a tea called tummy tea, which is a combination of peppermint as well as chamomile. So this all can be based on the culture, based on the test, can be used to help to decrease the gas and bloat.
Well, thank you so much for that. And I'm sure the listeners really appreciate your expert comments. And I always learn something new. I did not know about the peppermint and the cumin. That was also I remember when we spoke a few months ago about that. I was really fascinated by that concept. Well, thanks everyone for listening. We really appreciate your feedback on Apple Podcasts. You can subscribe if you like the podcast, and please feel free to leave us a review. Feel free to send the podcast on to any whom you feel would be helpful. And yeah, thanks for listening. And we'll be back with episode 5 and very soon. Thanks so much. Bye bye.